Alright, on the last video we stopped with number 12, so let's pick up with number 13. On number 13, the two angles that are marked are corresponding angles, so that means that they have to be equal because it shows that the lines are parallel. So since they have to be equal, then that means part equals part is the equation that we want to use. Oops, there's not 15, that's 5. So therefore, this 10x would have to be the same as this 11x minus 5, hence the equals. So in order to solve, I'm going to subtract 11x from the 10x, which would give me negative x equals negative 5. If we divide both sides by negative 1, x equals 5. So the answer to this problem is 5. And now if we look at number 14, I have two interior angles, because it's inside, and they're on the same side of the transversal, so that means they are consecutive interior. If you remember, consecutive interior angles, when lines are parallel, consecutive interior angles add together to be 180 degrees. Consecutive interior angles are supplementary. So therefore, in order to solve, I will say part plus part equals whole. In this case, the whole is 180. So when I go to solve this, the first thing I'm going to do is combine my like terms. So I have 77 plus 7. So that's going to give me 84 plus 24x equals 180. And then I would subtract the 84 from the 180, and that gives me 96. So 24x equals 96, and then I would divide both sides by 24, so x equals 4. So the answer to number 14 is x equals 4. Now on the next section, they want me to determine if lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Well, if you remember, when lines are parallel, their slopes are equal. For instance, if the slope of one line is 5, the slope of the second line has to be 5. If the slope of one line is negative 5 over 6, the slope of the other line has to be negative 5 over 6. Remember, if you have perpendicular lines, the slopes are negative reciprocals. That means one must be positive, the other must be negative, and they must be flipped. So for instance, one has to be flipped. For instance, if the slope of one line is 2/3, the line perpendicular to it would be flipped, and then the sign would be changed. So since this was a positive 2/3, this has to be a negative 3/2. So if one line had a slope of negative 5, the other line would be positive, and it would be the reciprocal of 5, which is 1/5. Now if they're not perpendicular and they're not parallel, then they are neither. So let's look back here at this part. Okay, if you notice on these lines, they're already in slope-intercept form. If you recall, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope. So in each of these equations, I'm going to look for the slope. So the slope of both of these lines are 3, so therefore the lines are parallel. In the next equation, I have the first line has a slope of 2. The second line has a slope of 7/2. Those aren't the same, so it can't be parallel. The opposite reciprocal of 2 is negative 1/2. Well, that's not the same either, so therefore they are neither parallel nor perpendicular. And let's look at it, number 18. Both have a slope of 6, so therefore they're parallel. And let's look at number 19. The slope of the first line is 4. The slope of the second line is negative 1/4. Well, they're not the same, so it can't be parallel. If 4 is the slope of the first line, its opposite reciprocal should be 1/4, and since it's positive, the reciprocal should be negative. Well, that is what the slope of the second line is. So since the lines are opposite reciprocal slopes, they are perpendicular. Okay, and then the next numbers say find the slope of each line and then determine if they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Well, in number 19, remember to find the slope. You do y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and you take the points they give you and you label them x1, y1, x2, y2. So filling into this formula, I would get 0 from here, minus 2 from there, over 2 from there, minus 1 from there. And in simplifying, that gives me negative 2 over 1, which is negative 2. So the first line has a slope of negative 2. So let's check out the slope of the second line. Well, that would be negative 2 minus negative 1 over negative 2 minus 0, which is negative 1 over negative 2, which is a positive 1/2. Well, if the slope of the second one is 1/2 and the slope of the first one is negative 2, they're definitely not parallel. So let's think about what is the opposite reciprocal of 2. Well, opposite means it would be positive, and reciprocal would be 1/2. Well, if you notice, that's the same as the second line. That means that these two lines are perpendicular. And number 22, the slope of line 1 would be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which would be 3 over 1, which is 3. Move this out of the way. And then the slope of line 2 would be 3 minus 2 over 6 minus 3, which is 1 over 3. Now, if you notice, up top I have a slope of positive 3. On the bottom I have a slope of positive 1/3. Although 1/3 is the reciprocal of 3, to be perpendicular, the lines would have to be opposite reciprocals, meaning one would have to be positive and the other would have to be negative, or vice versa. The first would have to be negative and the second would have to be positive. Well, both of these lines in number 22 are positive. So line 1 and line 2 in this case is neither parallel nor perpendicular. All right, now if we look at number 23, the slope of line 1 would be the y2 minus the y1 over the x2 minus the x1. Notice this has a negative, so I don't want to forget to put it in there. Negative 1 minus 1 is negative 2. 1 minus negative 2 is 3. So the slope of line 1 is negative 2/3. Now let's find the slope of line 2. That will be the y1 minus the y2 over the x1 minus the x2. Or we could say y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 is actually the way that I put the numbers in. So 1 minus 3 is negative 2. 4 minus 1 is 3. If you notice, both of them have a slope of negative 2/3, so therefore the lines are parallel. All right, and the last one in this section, let's find the slope of line 1. That would be the y2 minus the y1 over the x2 minus the x1. Notice the double negative here. I have to include it. I can't just leave it out. So I've got that minus negative 1. So that gives me 2 over 2, which is a positive 1. And then checking the slope of line 2, that gives me y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, which is 2 over 2, which is 1. Again, the slopes are the same, so the lines must be parallel to each other. Okay, going back down again, it says write an equation of the line that passes through the following 2 points. To be able to write the equation of a line, you need the slope and you need a point in which it goes through. So therefore I have points. I have 2 points. So I'm going to let this first point be my x1, y1. Second point be x2, y2. And the first thing I'm going to try to do is figure out the slope. Well, the slope would be 3 minus 1 over 1 minus 0, which is 2 over 1, which is 2. So I now know the slope of the line that I want has to have a slope of 2. Now I can plug into the point slope form. To be able to plug into this point slope form, I need the slope, which I already have here, and I need a point. Well, I have 2 points. I shall choose the first point to use. I could choose either point, but I'm going to use the first point since I've already labeled it x1, y1. So then I fill in y minus my y1 is 1 equals m, which we found out is 2, parenthesis x minus my x1 is 0. And then that would be y minus 1 equals, when I distribute this 2, I get 2x minus 0. And then when trying to simplify this equation to get y by itself, I'm going to add the 1 to both sides. And I get y equals 2x plus 1. So that is a line that has a slope of 2 and passes through the 2 points that they gave me originally. Now in looking at the next problem, I have 2 points, so the first thing I want to do is find the slope. So it'll be -5 minus -2 over 0 minus -1. That'll give me -3 over 1, which is -3. So there's the slope that I need. Now I'm going to choose this as the point that I use for point-slope form. Remember, I can choose either. And I'm going to plug into the point-slope equation. So it's going to be y minus -2 equals -3. Remember, that's what I found for my slope. Parentheses x minus -1. And then as I'm solving this, this is the same thing as y plus 2. Remember, this is the same thing as plus. Equals -3x minus 3. And then subtracting this 2 over, I get y equals -3x minus 5. So that's the equation of the line that would pass through those 2 points given in number 25. Well, here's another number 25. Evidently, I cannot count. First thing I want to do is find the slope. So that would be 3 minus 1 over 1 minus -1, which is 2 over 2, which simplifies to be 1. So there's my slope. Again, I'm going to use the first point, so y minus 1 equals 1 times x minus -1. So that's going to be y minus 1 equals x plus 1 when I distribute, because remember this is plus. When I add this 1 to both sides, I get y equals x plus 2. So that's the equation of the line that will go through those 2 points that were given. Again, we do the same thing for number 27. First we find the slope. So that would be 1 over 3. And then I'm going to use this point. So y minus 2 equals 1/3 onto x minus 3. So y minus 2 equals 1/3 x minus 1. When I add the 2 over, I get 1/3 x plus 1. So that's the equation of the line that goes through the 2 points that are given. Now the next part asks me to graph the equation. Well, remember, when you graph an equation that's already in slope-intercept form, m is the slope, that is your rise over your run, and the b value, that's the number that's tagged on the end, is your y-intercept. And you always plot the y-intercept first. So in this equation, my y-intercept is -1, so I go to -1 and I put a dot. Now I look at my equation. My slope here, that's the number beside the x, is -4. So remember, every whole number is over 1. So that means I am going to rise -4 and run 1. And that's to get my next point. So from this point here, I go down 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And I go to the right 1 because the 1's positive. So again, in case you didn't see that, I go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and to the right 1. So that means my line is going to go something like this. Okay, through those points. Now, let me warn you, whenever you go to graph these, if you're going to use slope-intercept form, you do need to make sure that y is by itself, and that it is indeed in slope-intercept form. Well, this equation is, my y-intercept is -2, so I go to -2, that's where I'm going to start from. My slope, there's not a number there, so that means my slope is 1. And remember, every whole number is over 1, so that means I rise 1, and I run 1. So that means from this point, I go up 1 and to the right 1, and I connect my dots, and that's what my equation is going to look like, because from here I went up 1 and over 1 to there. All right, number 30 says find the value of x and then find the measure of each angle. Well, looking at number 30, I noticed that together this piece here and this piece here are supposed to sum up to be 90, because that box means 90. So since I know the whole thing's supposed to be 90, this is going to be a part plus part equals whole, where the 2x plus 2, that's this angle, plus the 64 degrees that's here, should add up to equal 90. So then I put together like terms. So 2x plus 66 is going to equal up to be the 90. So then in order to solve this problem from here, I'm going to say 90 minus 66 because I'm going to subtract 66 from both sides. And I get 2x equals 24, which means x has to be 12. Now, that's the value of x. They also want the value of each angle. Well, if x is 12, I already know this is 64. So then all I need to do is plug in 12 into the 2 times x plus 12. Since I know x is 12, in the place of x I put 12. 2 times 12 is 24, and 24 plus 2 is 26. So this angle here is 26 degrees. Now looking at number 36, again I know together those two pieces have to sum to be 90. So that's 28 plus 2x has to equal 90. In order to solve from here, I'm going to subtract 28 from 90, and that's going to give me 62. And then when I divide by 2, that gives me 31. So x is 31. That's part of my answer. I already know that this angle is 28. I know this is 2 times x. Since I know x is 31, I say 2 times 31, which is 62 degrees. So this angle is 62 degrees. Then going down to number 37, again together I see that they have to add to be 90. So that means 5x plus 3 plus 32 has to equal 90. So I put my like terms together and I get 5x plus 35 has to equal 90. So then I'm going to subtract the 35 from the 90, and that means 5x equals 55. So x is 11. I know this angle is already 32, so here I plug in 11 for x. So I get 55 plus 3 is 58, so this angle is 58. And you might be thinking, well, but Miss Todd, I already know this is 32. If together they have to be 90, couldn't I just say 90 minus 32 is 58, and that would give me the answer? It would give you the answer for this side, yes. But don't forget, part of your answer to the question, so you fully answer it, is what is x? So you do have to do all parts. Now, looking at number 38, they try to trick you a little bit by giving you two different lines and array. But if you notice, the angles that they give me expressions for are those angles in here. So I know that this angle is 3x plus 10. I know that this angle is 4x plus 3. And I know together, I kind of marked, it's hard to see, but in the corner they had a box. So together they have to add to equal 90 degrees. So 4x plus 3 plus 3x plus 10 has to equal 90. I'm going to put together my like terms here, so that's 7x plus 13 has to equal 90. Then when I subtract 13 from 90, I get 7x equals 77. So x equals 11. Well, that's part of the answer. Now notice on this problem, they don't give me the angle measure for either side. I have to find it for both. So when I plug in 11 here, for this side, I get 4 times 11 plus 3. That's kind of some fat writing there. So it'll be 44 plus 3 is 47. So the top angle has to be 47 degrees. And then in trying to find here, I get 3 times 11 plus 10. So that's 33 plus 10. This angle has to be, oh, I can't add. Not 44. Has to be 43 degrees because 33 plus 10 is 43 degrees. And it is a good check if you think, well, 47 plus 43 does indeed give me the 90 that it's supposed to be. All right, so moving on.